and community control and of privacy and accountability. And I think that in this respect, to make digital infrastructures compatible with those values, so everything I mentioned, accountability, transparency, distributed trust, as you can see, they're not technical problems only, they're social and economic problems. And I think that the blockchain has the potential to address both the technical and economic side. And I think for me, as a city government, I'm very excited about large-scale decentralization. On a technical level, if you make it scalable and you make it compatible with integrity and transparency. But I think what I'm mostly excited is the economic side of this and the importance of shifting away in the monetization of digital services from monetizing and manipulating personal data with everything that we're seeing happening, you know, big scandals about. Also, we see a declining faith in liberal democracy because of this, a declining trust of citizens in using services where your personal data can be aggregated and manipulated by central actors that are not accountable. And so, and we're also seeing, of course, fake news and other really fundamental existential problems, I would say, of the digital world. So there, I think that we have a very strong potential that is the one of betting on new monetization model, new alternatives, for instance, for the sharing economy, for the collaborative economy, but also digital democracy, to see monetization shifting from that personal data manipulation. And I think this is something citizens ask us. So just very concrete examples, I lead the project is called Decode. Actually, we're partnering, we brought together many different actors that help us solving those challenges, 2 cities, Barcelona and Amsterdam, but also industry, academia, and civil society organizations that are coming together to solve in a multidisciplinary way those kind of problems. And we have practical applications in 2 fields. First of all, digital democracy. So we want to get away from the kind of Cambridge Analytica, Facebook democracy model that really doesn't work. And we are experimenting, we have a platform, it's called Decidim Barcelona, decidim.org, which is an open source, decentralized platform for democratic participation. And what we're doing is we're integrating Decode in there so that citizens can do secure petitions. They can sign petitions without disclosing their credentials or disclosing the minimum amount of data. And we're combining correctedness, so you can see that your view is taken into account. You can audit the system. You can see that it's correct, but you don't need, you keep your data encrypted. And this is very powerful because we have, 400,000 citizens only in Barcelona using it, but now we have more than 60 cities and countries that want to adopt this kind of platform for civic engagement, and it is very important to have it work in an accountable way. And then another exciting and very practical pilot is on the Internet of Things field. So we are working with the Fab Lab Barcelona, which is a local organization that uses Arduino boards and open hardware, and they put sensors in the homes of citizens to measure air pollution and air quality. You know that for cities this is a very practical problem, fighting climate change and make sure that cities are more livable and have better air quality. And now we are enabling citizens to basically encrypt the data that they share through this sensor network, and the citizens are in control. So they can decide what data they want to keep private, what data they want to share, with whom, and on what terms. And I think it's these terms that we want to flip around. So instead of having the big companies to decide what are the terms for you to access and share your data, for you to control your privacy, we want citizens to be in control. So that's what we call data sovereignty and the new social pact on data, which I hope, and I'm sure that distributed ledgers that are scalable, secure, and transparent can help us to address those kind of problems.
Okay, so interesting. So not just the hype, but really it can bring solutions to real problems of the citizen. So, yes. Okay, we have here a different perspective then. But what's in for the industry? Ulrike, what do you think? Is it really just a hype, or really we can see something going on?
No, it's not just a hype. Actually, we are very glad that the hype is going over and declining a bit, because we can now peel off the real value. And very much to what the other speakers already said, we also have in an industry context constellations where different companies work together, but don't trust each other enough to just use a common database. And so in these constellations, we think there's a big value of blockchain scenarios. You could think of, for example, production chains or product assembly where you have different parts and you need to have the original parts that have to be have gone through a quality control. So if that is really, if you can rely on each contributor's quality and security, that would be a big gain. We have other examples in the field of medication that has not been sold and will be returned to the manufacturer and shall again be sold. So this is possible. These resellable returns you can sell again if they are still the original package. So we can also use blockchain technology for that to just accelerate the control and also make it more secure. Of course, we also see in the field of government the issue that trust has been lost and is on the decline. So wherever you have this constellation that you want to have a tamper-proof information base, that no one actually can hide any issues or failure, so that would be the right way. Where are we with the industry, different industry customers that we have? We are halfway through, I would say. We are definitely beyond just experimenting and proof of concepts. There have been a lot around, and but now getting it into real, that shows all of us it's way more than just a technical problem. The technical issue or the technical foundation can be solved relatively easy. The issue is to build that consortium, to build that governance model, how different parties can actually play together in a reliable, trustful way, still governing their own interests.
Okay, so we will develop a little bit more later on the challenges, but I see excitement from the industry.
Absolutely.
Very good. So I would like now to turn to Catherine to see whether there is excitement also from the investors. Are they excited about blockchain?
I definitely see investors are excited, although picking up on a few points. First of all, I'll just kind of introduce who Outlier Ventures are so you kind of understand the context from which I'm coming from. So we're a venture platform based out of London, and we invest purely in DLT and deep tech projects. And we do seed investment ranging between 1 million and 2.5 million pounds. So there's definitely excitement, although it's quite a difficult time. And I'll pick up on a few of the investor trends, because obviously investors play a big part in this kind of whole ecosystem, because essentially we fund quite a lot of the projects that are looking to solve these issues, yep. And whether it's government or enterprise. One big trend is obviously the hype is over, and we call it crypto winter. It's actually our Christmas party theme. So with sparkles and Christmas and crypto winter is the theme for the Christmas party tomorrow. And yes, of course, it's quite a stressful time, because in some of our projects there has been Ethereum investments. So it is difficult, because some of our projects obviously hold Ethereum as their source of investment. And of course, when they raise 10 million, 20 million, they're basically sitting on half that amount of capital right now. So that is stressful, and my partners do come in sometimes without having slept that night, I agree. But part of the hype being over means that it's clearing out, and in the winter, the weak projects are dying. Okay. And we're seeing the survival of kind of like the fittest. It's almost like evolution. And obviously, we hope that the projects we invest in are going to be the fittest, and that they're actually focusing on building the tech. We focus completely on utility tokens. We haven't really dipped into the security tokens market yet. Okay. And yeah, we don't like, and sorry to say a bad word, but we don't like shit coins. We don't like those fraudulent projects. And so we see that the hype is over, and more smart money coming into the market, institutional investors, harder DD on projects. We see that as a huge positive, that it's a crypto winter. I was actually going to ask a very quick show of hands, who actually has invested in any crypto themselves. Don't be shy, don't be shy.
Great.
So technically you guys are investors too, right?
Excellent.
So you can speak as an investor. But yeah, crypto winter is hard. I hate checking my Coinbase. I try not to even check it because it's just, I saw today, I checked it this morning just in case I get a nasty question. And I thought, you know what, this is terrible. Why have I even looked at it? But we really want to focus on building the tech. And so that's a really good key trend. And part of my role is actually investor relations and enterprise engagement for our portfolio. So we're not just passive capital, we do advisory services. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the European perspective, because obviously that's our topic. From an investor perspective, so one, we do the seed investment, but I help our portfolio with our investor network get their next round, so pre-ICO, even though we actually expect that not to be the process for next year. We don't expect some of our projects to even do one anymore. Basically, we see that Europe is just not pulling the same amount of weight as the US and China, unfortunately. Okay. I mean, the US is leading. You've got huge investors there. And in China, the average investment per project outweighs the US. So I think it has a lot to do with the kind of data monopolies, the Alibaba, the Googles, and the fact that Europe doesn't really have these big kind of tech FANG firms that are dominating. So that's a bit of a trend we're seeing. We like to think of ourselves as the top European investor, and we invest in projects mostly out of North America and Europe. But we would actually like to get access to projects in Asia, and some of the Asian investors I speak to would like to get projects in Europe. But there's still yet to be some very solid connections. Okay. I think regulation is going to play a big part in that, and I think we'll speak about that a bit later. So I'll leave that on a ...
Okay,
and that will help you go to the next thing.
Catherine, thank you very much. So there is excitement on the investment side, but not as much excitement as in the US and China. So please take note, those that are investing. Let me turn now to Johan, because, we all know that blockchain is famous because of the Bitcoin, and that all this has happened outside the traditional research and innovation community. But as I was saying before, you were already working on it for some years. So how do you see the research community in this blockchain hype or not hype?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So some of the audience also have been working in distributed systems for many years and more experienced than me. So in 2007, we were in a field called distributed accounting systems, which was just as boring as accountants, and nobody cared about us. And we had some working technology. We presented papers to like 20 people who showed up regularly. And then somebody invented a way to make money and actually have other people pay them money. And it was fantastic. And it was like a few cents. And that was 2009 that the field solved for some instances the double spending problem. And then we were going to change the world. Then all these people from, let's say, left side of the certain spectrum, they were going to change the world, and we're going to tear down all the banks, land ownership. There's going to be no digital borders, no real borders. Hallelujah. And then that sort of didn't happen. We were like the Titanics called banks with a few billion on their Tier 1 capital ratio. They still survived. We have, even though Bitcoin became big, and we had young kids doing Ethereum and Ethereum Enterprise, because it's like, we can't miss out. We have to be there. So that went on a bit. And then we had actual, like, instead of tearing down the old elite, there was a new elite. The right wings took over, in my perspective. It's like, we're going to be filthy rich. We're going to take all the money. That was not nice people. Those were different people. They were not boring scientists like me. They did not know their own C code. They didn't write their own code. They were going to sell it. And they were multimillionaires, and they were 24 or something. It's like, that was a bit strange. Yeah. So, and then we, of course, in academia, and also as my colleague started the first master program, cyber currency, we started our own master program on blockchain, and now academia is picking up, and yeah, but did we really solve the Byzantine fault-tolerant problem? Nah, but miners can be corrupt. It's not really tamper-proof, and so we have a few decades, at least a decade, to have some more fun. So I'm a bit skeptical about all the investments making. We did some analysis. Well, I don't do anything. I just talk a bit, and so all the students doing the work and did some analysis, and we did some back-of-the-envelope calculations like. This is not worth $500 million. This cannot be worth more than the Booking.com or the Hiltons of this world, or all these file systems. So when you dived a few levels deep, there was no substance. It was just a bit of code and a bit of fantasy, and then they were putting it out there. So we never met an ICO that actually was worth their rating. And there was an interesting distinction. Is it deliberately fraudulent, or just borderline incompetence, or optimism, or like, yeah, we from the ivory tower, we like to make systems grounded and take at least 10 years to build them, and then also do some correctness proof. We don't know how to do that, provable correct software at scale, but still, we always try. And then for financial systems, it's like, it seems you have to use something like COBOL to make systems work. They're called core banking systems, and you can't change them for 30 years because somebody will lose money. So this is sort of the two worlds who are not yet colliding. And then the problem, or thank for us, because we've been doing these systems, and we're 100% engineers and scientists in the team, so that's why you never heard of us. But we do take European Union money. Thank you for the generous funding over the years, because I would not be in this chair if we didn't have that. So that's actually not many people, most people think Bitcoin, but distributed ledgers were a few years ahead. Then in Amsterdam, where everything is legal, they did this disruptive technology already in 2002. Cornell University did, in the trustworthy environment of a data center, they did it, Robert van Renesse, Cornell University, 2005, I believe. So this has a bit of history. But yeah, we can't solve the double spending problem at scale. And that's to wrap up my. So you see that the current startup, all these. We also check, of course, we were early miners. So we have a three-digit Bitcoin wallet. All these minor things which are owned by a university. So we have some fun. But did you see that it will not scale? Global consensus in a distributed system, it just doesn't scale. There's fundamentals laws about that. We do not know how to do consistent global broadcasts, which are needed to do that. So that means you cannot base your digital economy on something as we currently have. So we need a new type of technology. We're working very happily on that. So probably every citizen needs their own blockchain, or a ledger actually, because you probably need to do away with the need for global consensus. So then you put some trust in there, and then there's a small problem that then you start gossiping around trust factors. We still don't know how to do gossip at scale. Trust factors, fake news was mentioned. So trust is actually one of the key things in our economy. So we now have a person who is not vetted. He just has an app, and then he drives people around town. He doesn't have a taxi license, but he has 5 stars or 4-point-something stars in an app, and that's why we trust him, this person. That's beautiful, isn't it? Oh yeah, by the way, and if the rating, the star things, if they drop below 4 stars, an algorithm will fire that person. Is that allowed in Europe? Really? That's an interesting policy. But anyway, so we have implemented a fully distributed system of Uber. 2 months it took it because of our infrastructure. You can't make money out of that stuff. So that's my closing thing. The infrastructure is now being made. It will take another 5 or 10 years. It's infrastructure. The state needs to pay for it. It's just about trust, strong identity, not melting down the planet because of mining. And there's no business model for that. It's called taxes. And once we're out of that stage, we can build a bit of trust. We have the new Uber without taking the money, or all these things which utility token, they all live off taking a cut. We'll have nice multi-party agreements which are tamper-proof and all these different primitives. then we have a new form of business contract, fully in the digital domain instead of just Word document and faxes. Then we're going to be in a new, different world.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, well, I see certainly a lot of excitement. I'm going to check, before giving the chance to others to react in the floor, whether there are questions, because with all this excitement, I can imagine that maybe some people want to intervene from the audience. Can we check if there are questions that were sent via this Slido? Okay, so I see that people have voted for different questions, but the one that is most voted, I'm going to leave it for the end of the session, because we are going to have one part of this panel dedicated fully to what's the role of public policy on this. So what regulations are we preparing? We're going to leave it for Peteris for later on. I see 4 votes for why not talk about distributed ledger technologies instead of blockchain, which indeed, as I announced, I was using the 2 terms knowing that they are not the same, but just to have my life easier. Blockchain is, after all, one part of this, but DLT is a better paradigm to talk about. Anybody in the panel wants to comment about this, which looks more like a comment than a question? Yeah, Peteris, yeah.
We get into a little bit of definitional areas, and I would say that the Commission takes a broad approach. I mean, we're not purists, that we are only accepting by any means the original Bitcoin blockchain based on mining. We're including in our initiatives the hash graphs, the DLTs of Hyperledger, Fabric, and so on. And though we would be running a permissioned but decentralized blockchain, we're also looking through an association to collaborate with the permissionless ones that anyone can join. So on this, there's an academic debate, which perhaps is very interesting, but we're taking a broad-based approach to innovative, decentralized technology.
Okay, so thank you, Peteris, for clarifying, and forgive me if I didn't use it correctly, but again, it's just to take it in the broader sense. Let me take another one.
I could very quickly answer those that have 0 votes, but still, as it's so easy to answer. So yes, absolutely, blockchain scenarios or distributed ledger scenarios are ideal for the traceability of food quality. We actually have a project ongoing, which we call From Farm to Consumer. And we have a little startup as a partner that, in addition to, so this is one scenario, the composition of food in the food manufacturing and produce chain. Another one is to control the transport of food, so a so-called cold chain. So, and that's an Internet of Things scenario where you have a sensor that would directly then report and tamper-proof, in a tamper-proof way, report if the temperature got too high. We have a little startup called Modem from Switzerland, which we work together with, and also have scenarios for that, or
excellent. So
custom examples.
Thank you very much, Ulrike. We are moving now to the second part of the panel discussion today, and here we are going to look a little bit more to the future, and in particular, what are the challenges? Because some of them were already hinted at. But we all know that there are some challenges. Examples I could give is of course, energy efficiency, or the difficulty to build system on fluctuating cryptocurrencies. There are certainly many others. I would like to start with Antonis. What do you think are the main challenges today?
I think generally with new technology, the main challenge is consumer utility. I'm just old enough to have gone through the whole development of the internet. And I remember time and time again how the internet was going to collapse because it wasn't going to scale, it wasn't going to work because of web browsing, it wasn't going to work because of video, it wasn't going to work because of spam, it wasn't going to work because everyone was sending too many emails, and so on and so on. And eventually, after 20 years of looking at this, I have come to a comfortable internal heuristic that things do not fail because too many people want to use them, right? Things fail because nobody wants to use them. And so and this might seem that it's a little too flippant, but I think it's right. All challenges of the type, there are too many people who want to use this thing and the planet's going to be destroyed or what have you, I think is not going to be the case, because you have vast economic rewards for people who solve them, and there will be tens of thousands of smart people around the world, from Delft and everywhere else in the world, looking to find solutions to those things. Are those solutions different blockchains? Are they side chains? Are they different layers? Are they permissioned? Are they non-permissioned? Those we'll figure out along the way, right? So the part that to me is interesting is, how do you actually get usage, right? To get usage, it has to be simpler for the end consumer. I've been on a lot of panels, I've been in a lot of courses, I've been in a lot of very smart people that have to do with blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and it's still a 1-hour exercise to get someone from zero to a basic understanding, and that's absolutely wrong, right? The reason Facebook is effective is because you don't have to start thinking about TCP/IP and routers and border protocols on the internet to get up and like your friend's post, right? And to the degree we're talking, is it DLT, is it blockchain, is it cryptocurrency, is it public permission? It's never going to work. Like no one cares, right? The people in this room care, but an average person out walking down the street in Vienna, these are theological debates that they're uninterested in. So I think, one, to the degree that the field matures and they present consumer-ready solutions, I think you will see adoption go further. And then I think on the public side, I had this at a conference 2 weeks ago and I said this, and I think it ties to what you're saying. I do think governments have a role in that they can be more ambitious, more aggressive in making their data sets public, right? So everyone keeps saying, we're going to decentralize data, we're going to decentralize data, we're going to decentralize data. Who's going to decentralize data? The private companies that have it? Of course not, right? Like Marriott isn't going to come and say, here's my customer database, I've spent 50 years building it, there's 500 million people in it, and I would like everyone to have equal access to it. Companies are never going to decentralize them, right? So the way, and there, I believe there is now the opportunity, with the fact that blockchains can allow you to control data, for governments at any level, from transnational all the way down to local, to ambitiously put their data out there. And I think that could happen now. Okay. So consumer utility and friendliness and availability of data sets. We take note also for what it concerns public authorities. Ulrike, you were mentioning before also governance as a challenge. Can you develop a little bit more?
Yeah, so in that enterprise section, as of today, we talk about permission blockchain. That means the partners actually know each other and need to agree on how to collaborate. That's one of the challenges when we talk about enterprise scale blockchain, in addition to the technical challenge to make it really fast enough and deal with large numbers. So keep in mind, we're talking here about a consortium or group of organizations or companies that have to guard their own interests. And so now you just need to first be able to bring everyone at the table, and this might actually cross many industries, different industries that so far are more siloed, to build such a consortium. And usually it also involves, or very often it also involves, public services, so government agencies. That in itself is already a challenge, and then you need to agree on terms and conditions how to collaborate. Who sets the rules, how can you actually join such a consortium as a company if you want? Yeah, what if someone misbehaves, or what if there's some technical failure, how do we deal with that, these things? And clearly, as I see it currently, it's really getting this first move, who's taking ownership, that is one of the challenges that we see, and it's interesting for us as a company also to see that many of our customers revert actually to us to request us to be in the lead here, which is not something that we usually do. But of course now we facilitate that, but in the end we want to hand over that consortium to those who are part of it, and that's not us.
Okay, so the rules of the game within the consortium is a challenge. I'm turning now to Johan, because it is mentioned often that to find a legally compliant solution to identify unsigned transactions is also a challenge. As you are an expert in this, do you agree with this?
Yeah, thank you. That is indeed as we've been in this game, and we're almost for a long time now. And then you see that startups with much more money than any university, or ecosystems with more capital than much of the academic world, they just can out-innovate everybody. So what's then the role of the university and people who have a job for life to innovate? What are you going to do? You're going to read the newspaper, or so our decision was to do the boring bits. And the most boring bit is a legally valid electronic signature. And we don't have that in the blockchain world. You cannot put down electronic signatures. And so 28 years ago, the whole public-private signature scheme was invented. And nobody had laws for it. Then we had the web of trust. A person named Phil Zimmerman invented the web of trust. He's now very happy that he's on the payroll of Delft University of Technology, so very, very good for that. But we don't have a web of trust. We mentioned fake news. It's like there's company who ruthlessly make money by dividing us and amplifying fake news. Fake news is not the problem. It's like you can make money amplifying and get a peak at angle and triggering their reptile brain. It's like, that's fascinating. So yeah, all this ecosystem exists and the Bitcoin exists, but yeah, you can, it's difficult to do legal companies on it or just make money of the ecosystem itself. But if you want to do real economic impact and you want to really change the economy and change banking, how it exists, or the financial worlds, you need to have something compliant. We don't even have identity technology. We don't have trust that much. So internet is just sending out packets. And we've known for many decades how to do cryptography and things, but I have a passport from the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It has a crypto key in it, and the state has created that crypto system. It is not open source, I can tell you. We have, as we're a university, we can beg for a copy, and we have a sort of a thing we can copy, and we of course open sourced the library to read, but we cannot legally read the brain pool and the curves from it, but we can. It's not legal that much. So you need to have a liberal interpretation of innovators that you can read these things. So we don't have an identity. We can do now smart contracts. We can send money around in cyberspace with bitcoins, but we cannot create businesses or decentralized markets or all these things. So unless we have an identity that works, which is tied to an electronic signature and identity, so that's why we've been begging for the past years for some interesting contracts with our government, and they allowed it. I now have a signature from our kingdom that yes. You can do some money if other people also put in money, and sure, then we're going to do 10,000 digital blockchain-based boarding passes, and they're going to let them through customs even. That's what they promised me. So I actually have to get to work, and because passport project, ministers lose their job over this stuff in our kingdom, and these are slight. So if what identity you have legally, that seems to be a bit of a political issue. So we're talking directly to the people who create the database, which determines citizenship, and then we build a certificate on top of that you have a key, and then you come to the municipality and you say, here's my blockchain. It's open source. It's only in my smartphone. It's not permissioned, it's unpermissioned, it's private. I fully control who has access to this thing. There's no minors, this thing. It's just my stuff. Please, since the dawn of Napoleon registration, you have never recognized me. But now, here's my public key. I want to have that. Not on my birth certificate, but of my digital birth certificate. And they seem to want to do this. They're a bit slow, and they're already a year behind internal deadlines and all these things. But there's now some political maneuvering, because self-sovereign identity, that's what we're talking about. And there's now startups who are doing that. The Belgians are doing it. Finland is moving along. Germany. So we're out of the testing phase, and we have a few generations of the prototype. So we're now ready for one of the major airports of Europe. But I'm a bit nervous, because then we actually have people crossing borders and being identified fully in the electronic domain, and only mathematics and flawless implementation without bugs. That all needs to work. Okay. So this infrastructure from blockchain, but blockchain-based passports and passport-grade security, that is now in the works in our lab.
So it doesn't look so boring in the end.
I have a nice job.
You do. We are going to move forward. And I think that we cannot avoid talking about the fact that blockchain is not happening in isolated. So some of you mentioned already Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. So there is convergence in the technologies. And I'm going to ask, in fact, this question to Catherine. No? What do investors think about this convergence? Do you see it? Is it an opportunity?
So at the Crypto Winter Christmas Party, one of the games is how many times will we say the word convergence, and you need to take a shot. So convergence is our official strapline. If I could have my slide, please. So I'm just going to do a very quick brief. This is like a 3-minute brief on what the hell convergence is, and this is how we invest. This is our investment thesis. Convergence sees the kind of merging of DLT and deep tech, and we see DLT as a way for deep tech to scale at large. So there's various questions, various topics that kind of other people have touched upon, but I think one of it was kind of what is the real use case for DLT and blockchain? And so we see the building of the next web as the way that DLT will really be implemented. And obviously, data is the core asset in the building of this next web. So I know there's a lot of small writing on there, and I apologize, but it's more to visualize what this kind of data structure is going to look like. And we call it Web 3. A very kind of important concept to think about, and obviously we're all human beings here, and I'm sure there's some IoT devices in the room, but hopefully most people are humans, no robots, is that obviously IoT has now, since 2017, last year, taken over the number of people on the planet. So there's now more IoT devices than people. And if data is going to be the core asset of the Web 3, realistically, as you can see, the data flow, how this all enters, is mostly through IoT devices. So we need to think about Web 3 not only as kind of people and peer-to-peer interactions, but these peer-to-peer interactions are going to be between people, bots, IoT devices, algorithms, AI, agents, and this is kind of how we see the construct of the next web. And obviously these are the different data layers. And there was a very important topic kind of presented that people are a bit tired of the FANGs and how they manage our data and pretty much violate our data. And there's a whole concept of who owns our data. A lot of people question, like, do people really care? I mean, do I really care that Facebook takes my data? Maybe not. Maybe I don't care that much. Fine, they lost all my bank codes. I mean, it's a bit annoying, but what can I do? There's no other option. But I think with decentralized projects, and this is where we invest in, we only invest in open source, decentralized projects building their own ledger. And the tokenization aspect comes to incentivize behavior and incentivize building. If something is built which is a better product for the end user than Facebook, and I personally find Facebook quite boring to use right now, I can't lie. If there's another product that comes on the market that's better than Facebook, that's built through kind of a decentralized platform, then we might start seeing the kind of movement of how the data paradigm is shifting. There was another element of ID and identification, and I really like this, of what is your actual identification? Who are you? What is your ID? And realistically, it's kind of through a series of transactions and data transactions. So this is kind of a little bit of an overview, and you can see some of our portfolio members of who we've invested in. So one of our portfolio members is IOTA, which is a publicly listed coin, and that's kind of IoT to IoT machine transactions and data collection. We also have Fetch, which is the world's first smart ledger, so machine learning built into a ledger. We have Sovereign, self-sovereign identity, which is a zero-knowledge proof ledger, which is actually working directly with Hyperledger and IBM, and they work with a lot with our enterprise. And so these are the kind of different companies we're investing in. This is our investment thesis. Another question, again, coming back to how is this actually really going to shift? How are we going to get from Web 2, where we have platforms, the platform internet, owning our data, to kind of shifting this on its head and us owning our data, or at least it being slightly more democratic, as you mentioned, Francesca. We're kind of starting to see, and we recognize there's so many coins out there. How do you know which one to use? How do you know which platform to build on? We see that the next trend is going to be kind of MMA transactions and different projects merging. And interesting enough, we spoke to the investors of Spotify the other day. And Spotify is now thinking, you know, what are they going to look like in Web 3? So I think we'll see the shift between Web 2 and Web 3 through these MMA transactions of apps merging with some kind of very decentralized platforms and vice versa. So that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Very interesting. I see that Francesca wants to say something, so please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I anticipate a question for the next round. That would be about policy and regulation. To me, I mean, I think both of you actually pose this challenge. There is a much bigger challenge that I see in terms of crypto economics or the economics of this. And you said before, if we're talking about identity, reputation, and probably also digital payment, these are underlying critical infrastructures that should be paid, I mean, where we need a big public leadership. And in Europe, I mean, which we have a social economic model, this infrastructure can be public, and can be public underpinned by decentralized distributed ledger, but definitely with a strong oversight, in particular around data. Now, I think the big question there is the economics of this is how do we break the data monopolies, which definitely represent a problem, also because Europe, as you also said, doesn't have the Google or the Alibaba. And I mean, I'm an economist by training. I have to say, if you look at the space of the digital economy, you see an unparalleled market power now with the big tech. So we are talking about really the scale of this is around $3 trillion of market evaluation, where you see the top companies by market evaluation are all big tech. And actually, the digital supremacy battlefield is amongst the US Silicon Valley companies, the Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook. And on the other side, you see the Chinese giants, Tencent, Alibaba, and so on coming up. And Europe is nowhere there. So now, I think that here we have a big opportunity to show that you would have a different model where data, personal data in particular, is not a commodity, but is a social right. And that can be a public infrastructure underpinned by all these new technologies. And then the framework, we already have it because we have the GDPR, which I think instead of saying government is boring and they don't know how to regulate and they're always late, this is not true actually, because if you see the long-term innovation that can play out, actually now Europe has a model where we talk about data trust and we have some regulation that preserves digital citizen rights, which I think is very important for the future. And then you can also create a market opportunity for our startups, SMEs that can compete. So instead of having one Uber, one Google to manage all the services, healthcare, transportation, and so on, we're going to have competition here. So we're going to have the startups, you guys, the innovators, the academics to play a role in the future digital economy that's going to be more diverse and that's going to preserve the digital rights of citizens. So I would like to portray this possibility, but I think the big question, of course, is going to be around the market power and the economics of it, and not only about the technology.
Okay, so in fact, what I'm going to do, because this is a very nice transition to indeed the third part of the panel, don't worry, we will take your questions, but I think it's I suppose that Eva and Peteris are probably wanting to, but okay, yeah. We may have some solutions to all these things that you are mentioning. So I think that I will smoothly move to the third part of the panel, which is what's the role of public policy makers, because we are being challenged here. So I don't know if Beatrice or Eva, which one of you want to start and react on this?
I have to start because I have to say the good things about Peter is that he's not saying about himself. So first thing, they have managed to have a lot of funding for blockchain solutions. And they are the most open-minded people that I've met in governments, and really fast. So I think we made a good team to move really ahead from the developments and have a very solid direction on where we're going as Europe. So we're working on more funding now through different budget lines, and now we're preparing the next actually 10 years of what's happening in Europe. So I think we can be proud of that. I think that we can actually be really competitive in blockchain and also artificial intelligence. We have director generals that are really open-minded, and they understand the challenge. To be competitive, we have to work together in the European Union. And for those that stayed, and I was saying that like the hype is still here, it's a full room, and we're quite technical maybe, but there are awards for all of you that have ideas how to use blockchain for social good. 5 million for 5 ideas in 2019, given by the European Commission. So I think these are the first things that I see a government is doing to promote and support this innovative technology. And I heard a lot of things said here. Let me just say that by principle, I don't want to say that the shared economy is the best model, but it's really innovative, and it gives us an opportunity to think out of the box. And we don't expect them to follow the rules. We have to do smart regulation and legislation, principle-based, not to stop them, but to try to think how we can improve our traditional systems. Because if that was the case, then Uber would have been banned everywhere. I don't think we want that. For me, it's really useful, although I don't like some things that they have in their mentality. But we can improve that. You don't stop innovation, you improve it. You set the rules. So principle-based, and that's what we try to do with blockchain too. So we try to support the technology, give clarity, legal certainty. So I saw questions on legal certainty. So first of all, let's say that in Europe we will make sure that blockchain will actually work. Besides the resistance we had from the traditional systems, then people that thought that by removing friction and intermediation they would lose their jobs. They have to understand that disruption is coming with artificial intelligence too, automation. So we have to be able to be creative and use this disruption and adapt and make something even smarter than this technology that we already understand. So the philosophy around blockchain is something that's really exciting for Europe because it's for good. It's to decentralize things. You know, I'm from Greece. Antonis is from Cyprus, by the way. So we are from the 2 countries that had to deal with the crisis when it hit Europe. And we have capital controls. They lost their deposits in the banks. Banks closed. So central banks couldn't actually take the burden of the crisis, and we transferred it to the taxpayers. So now we have solutions that can help us avoid this from happening again. I think it's a revolution. And I think the technology came as a solution. And if we have other problems, the technology will solve them, like the energy issue, the scalability, interoperability. And I already know amazing people that they work on these solutions. So if you see a problem, don't think if politicians do something about it, if the technology is good enough, just figure out a way to solve it, and then you will make room and you will get the funding and you will get money. There is 130 billion of costs, hidden costs in our transactions. Find the solution to remove this cost and we will be there to set everything up. We're working now, so he's not saying also that he's been fighting for the PSD2 that happened 3 years ago. This is the FinTech action plan that we're trying to set up, the crowdfunding that I worked on, and now sandboxes, and removing the protection of the banks to our data. So now we release data for FinTech companies. And I think Peter can say more about what we are planning to do the next few months, because we're moving really, really fast. And don't forget, we still don't have a real Europe, so not everything is harmonized, especially the tax system and education system. But if you're a European citizen, you can go to the University of Nicosia and get a blockchain degree. You can pay in bitcoins. You can get your certificate on blockchain. And if you have a company and somebody's selling a fake product of your company, you can put a sensor inside and authenticate it and then track it down wherever it is and make sure that it will not be sold. So put it on blockchain and people can check if it's real, authentic or not. Companies do that. They do that in Europe. And I'm really very proud of the work we've been doing. And I think now it's the revolution of the geeks, actually. The geeks are the coolest people now on Earth.
Thank you very much, Eva, and also for being so positive. But Peter, now you really, I mean, this is why I'm trying to leave time for you to reply to all the requests. You know, often you have everybody like, don't regulate, don't do anything, leave us alone. But here I see a lot of challenges about where we could or should be doing something in terms of funding, in terms of legislation, even breaking monopolies, my goodness. So what are we doing actually, and what are we going to do?
Well, thank you for giving me the floor, and thank you to Eva for the kind words. We appreciate very much the collaboration with you and with the European Parliament, which has been very active on the blockchain dossier, as well as artificial intelligence and the rest of the digital revolution. I'll start with the philosophy. The philosophy is that blockchain is an ideal technology for the multi-level governance of the European Union. We don't want to centralize things in Brussels. We are a union of member states, of regions, of cities with our European blockchain services infrastructure, which I'll introduce in a moment. We'll start with nodes in all the member states, also Norway, who's joining as an EEA country, and the European Commission. The UK is still in. It's in until it's not in. So the UK, as Margot James, as Minister of Digital, signed the blockchain declaration, and it would further move to the municipalities and the regions with further development. So how did it start with us? The FinTech Action Plan, the European Blockchain Initiative. I mean, going back to 2012, 2013, when some of us first picked up Bitcoin, and that while it wasn't so interesting as a possible replacement for a currency and doesn't really function as such right now, more as an object of speculation, the underlying technology was very interesting for a number of other things. So we followed up on this with setting up a European Blockchain Observatory and Forum. This was kind of a gift of the European Parliament, a different MEP, Jakob van Weizsäcker. And this Blockchain Observatory and Forum analyzes and maps what's going on blockchain in Europe. So if you have projects, initiatives that aren't on the mapping yet, please notify it. You can be in contact with it, be in the communities directly. You don't have to go through the commission. It works for us. It was partially the basis for us launching a European blockchain partnership. On the 10th of April, our Commissioner Maria Gabriel and Director General Roberto Viola welcomed a whole set of ministers. It's now 27 countries. I think that the first initial signature, 22 ministers of economy, of digital, who signed up to create a European blockchain services infrastructure. We've worked rapidly with the member states. We've identified use cases, exactly as was said, where a large number of actors, 28 regulatory reporting authorities, needing to, by regulatory requirement, make reports, share registers, 30 to even 80% savings at the common level shown by pilot projects. This will launch in Connecting Europe facilities starting next year. We'll launch the call for the member states that will finally participate, and more use cases in areas like health, other areas where, again, where it's justified, where you need a large number of actors across the union at national level, municipal level, regional level to coordinate, to share data, to validate transactions. Another use case that's coming up is certification and notarization of diplomas and work qualifications across borders. It will eventually utilize tokenization and also smart contracts to automate things for the citizens, because a lot of e-government services aren't free. This wouldn't be using, again, Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency on it. It would most likely be a digitalized euro from commercial banks. This is all still to be worked out, potentially even collaboration with the ECB. The final steps that I would still mention, it was asked about the regulation. We're at the end of this College of Commissioners, and as we sometimes have to emphasize, we are a political commission. It's the politicians, the commissioners who take the decisions. It's too late to propose new legislation. We're in an analysis period right now with the Blockchain Observatory and Forum and with all of you, anyone who wants to give inputs. Firstly, looking for places where there's a barrier, and especially sectoral legislation, started with the financial area with the FinTech Action Plan, but also for areas like energy, health, logistics, others. Please let us know if you see places that transactions have to be validated through only one monopoly manner, one way, and in a future-proofed way, we would look to say could also be done on a decentralized and or distributed, resilient, certified system. We would again look for some wording that's neither blockchain, DLT. Again, it's a decision for the next politicians, but the analysis is now point out to us any problems. Another thing we're looking at very closely are smart contracts in order to use them in our own infrastructure, which also we want to open up to more collaboration with those having to do reporting with citizen services. We want to make sure they can be recognized across borders. So we're looking at this. Does there need to be a set of guidelines or even a legislative proposal for this? Also ensuring fairness, resilience, revocability, and so on. Also, the so-called utility tokens. This is something we would like to enable, a way to tokenize, in a tokenized manner, run a decentralized system, also to invest in a decentralized system. Again, something we're in the analysis stage. Please let us know if you're interested in this, if you think this needs to be done. If so, what needs to be done? And then finally, it's clear that this is only a part of the ecosystem, and we want to be interoperable and collaborating with the also completely permissionless, decentralized blockchains, the permission ones within a couple of companies. And for this, our Commissioner Maria Gabriel on the 20th of November took initiative to call for a private stakeholders association globally of those who are interested in producing or utilizing blockchain solutions. We'll have a follow-up meeting coming up very soon. It will be open to any blockchain company or any blockchain user looking on how there can be dialogues with regulatory authorities, us, but also our partners in other countries, and among yourselves, which of course this would not be run by the Commission, but we are hoping to provide a space to make sure that this can be Web 3.0 or the next generation internet, whatever you want it to call, that will be more decentralized, more human-centric, and will be a great opportunity for innovation and dynamism in the European economy and society.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We are doing something. Eva wants to...
I think I want to add something. So these are the amazing things that are happening, and we have a roadmap to do that. So basically, we estimate, I think at this point, 2017, we had 4 billion invested, if I'm not mistaken, in blockchain solutions and blockchain companies. We expect that it would contribute to the economy by 2030 more than 1 trillion. Some people say 3. So this is huge, and jobs are needed. There is huge demand for people that understand blockchain. So you have to expand. Sorry, you have to expand. we have a huge institute in Greece, CERT, working on innovation, and 700 scientists. They now need a lot of blockchain people with understanding of blockchain. They work on several applications on health solutions, fintech solutions, identity solutions. And basically, I loved math. That's why I'm involved in this space. You have to understand a bit the technology, and then you can actually trust mathematics a bit more than maybe politicians. So that's not a bad thing. But don't go for the price. So don't look at Coinbase. This is not like the hype of the trading is one thing, but there is huge value in blockchain. It's an amazing technology as long as it explains, when you have an ICO, why it's useful, what is the value there. And you cannot, you have to be realistic. If it's a fraud, even if it's not on blockchain. If it's blockchain fraud, it's just fraud again. So basically, if something looks like a fraud, it probably is. Forget about that. Go and see amazing projects that carry value. For example, you can invest in an ICO, and they can offer you tokens, and these tokens can offer you access to a service, or they can offer you equity, or they can offer you rewards. And this idea, if it's good, you can contribute in a much easier way than you could through an investment bank or like the old ways to do that. So it's really a revolution. And I just finished the crowdfunding file, and we opened it up in Europe. So if you are in one country, you can just raise up to 1 million. Now you can raise 8 million all over Europe, which is a big thing for small companies. So we changed that, and now we're going to have the sandboxes. They're coming. This means you can be also protected. You have this legal certainty. There were these two guys, 15 years old, with swords, and they were entering a big office, legal office of lawyers. It's like, hi, so we just developed a new blockchain solution, and we uploaded a crazy idea on the internet, and we raised 10 million.
Wow.
They didn't even have a bank account. So they said, are we in trouble? So you need legal certainty. You need to make sure that people will dare to have crazy ideas. But also you need to protect people that invest in these solutions. They have to understand where is the legal base, the jurisdiction of this company, of this solution. Mm-hmm. And so I think we are getting there. I think we're getting there faster than other places. And at least I saw that US didn't want to have a different definition than everything is a security, and now they're turning a bit to the European definition we had, that new definitions are needed. You cannot put the new technologies in old boxes. So we have to be smarter than that. I know we're trying to define the platforms. So somebody was asking, are we marketplaces, are we the TV? So Facebook was asking, do you consider we're a TV? Are we newspaper? What are we? And it's you don't have to be something. You can be something new. You're a platform that provides different solutions, innovative ones. So we have to have different and smart legislation. So anyway, we're trying to do it fast. If you have any ideas, we're open to that. We are listening a lot. And I'm very happy because the first time I entered the conference 4 years ago on blockchain, there were just men. So this is a good, yes. I think we have more women now, and that's good because they are actually very good at working on new technologies and computer science, and also they didn't like politicians. I think we managed to change that a bit. We are invited in many places, so okay. So politicians can be good if they understand the technology and they don't stop it, but they give you legal certainty. So if you have suggestions on how we can do that, based on principles mainly, just let us know. And thank you for giving us this opportunity here in this forum.
Thank you very much for that. Before turning to the questions, because I hope and suppose that there is a list of questions, if there is any reaction, it has to be quick so that we really can answer the questions from the audience. But Johan, I was seeing you I want.
Oh yeah, so this is interesting, fascinating to see the legal talk. So sadly, I actually fill my time these days with talking to privacy authorities, regulators, and all, because one of the things is that existing legislation is blocking a lot of these good use cases, and legislators' procedures are very slow. And if we look a bit more at the future, that the majority of our economic activity is going digital and it's going through the internet, and then we have this magical entity called Web 3.0 where everything is going to be faster, it's going to be safer, and there's going to be more money, and actually there's probably going to be more collaboration. This is actually a European technology. This is not a ruthless winner-takes-all, because we have to be together on the blockchain. We have to share things. This is not in everybody's cultural DNA. So that is fascinating. Just to go a bit, things like, when will we have KYC portable files on the blockchain for the fintech crowd? When will we have, and that's only for us, an Article 1 procedure? Article 1 of the identity law, that your passport is beyond a doubt your valid identity in all economic traffic. We don't have that. We're just going to do it like we did.
We have the technology to do that. We want to do that, but the European Union consists of 28 member states with different tax systems, different languages, different legal systems in any case. So basically it's not easy to work in this direction, but now you have the technology and you have a digital economy that has no barriers, no borders. So we're about to do that. That's why there is a tender for identity solutions on blockchain. So if you travel, you have an identity and you don't need to translate it. You don't need to say, okay, this looks Greek to me. I mean, if it's a Greek passport, come on, nobody can understand if it's me. So we need blockchain solutions there. And now we have the technology to make sure there are no fakes, to avoid the duplication of the certification, and there's going to be a call on certification. So if you have, so I was like, I'm in Brussels, and if I don't go back to Greece to take all my certificates, if I want to go to apply for a job, in Italy and Spain, I have to translate each script, each document. Mm-hmm. It's insane. And you have to translate it, you have to verify it, and then you have to go there and give it to them, and they actually have to cross-check. And not everything is digital, not all the universities. So we're getting there, but the technology is offering us these possibilities. So actually, what you're saying is that we had problems that we couldn't solve, at least in a way that it would be, safe for the citizens and protect them too. But I think now we do, and we are willing to do that. Sometimes member states block us because they take some time to move with these procedures, but we're pushing them a lot. And that's why I said it's really important, because if in the Commission you have people like Peter is so open-minded and so willing and knowledgeable of that, because he's like a lawyer, but he speaks like a computer scientist, right? So if you have people like that, then you move really fast.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that the audience has the right also to ask questions. So, and I see one with a lot of votes. Is blockchain killing the middlemen, or new generation of third parties will emerge? Will the old third parties fight back? So these are very, very backed questions. So who wants to answer to that?
I can say something and then happily hand it over to the other colleagues. I mean, it's a very interesting, one of the potentials of blockchain is definitely to cut out the middleman in certain areas, like we started in, as I said, the fintech area, post-trade, things where there are custodians, multiple actors. Those are the areas that you have to look at, in particular legislation, that you can perhaps technologically now do it without them, but they may be required in existing rules or regulation. So this is why also we want your inputs. We don't have by any means all the wisdom in the world. We're undertaking the so-called fitness checks. We have an expert group on the financial sector, but I mean this is also for other sectors. Point out to us where there is an unnecessary middleman that could be removed by the technology, and we will look at that obviously for the recasting of the legislation. But of course there is, as Eve also mentioned, the political side, because sometimes these actors defend their role, and then it is in the end a political decision whether to amend or make the change or not.
Other reactions? Ulrike? Yeah.
So, yes, in part it will cut out, or it will at least change the role of a middleman. And if they still have enough then to say that they stay as an organization around, that's in the end a political decision. So we have customers, of course, who are the middlemen, classic banks. Yep. But I've also already spoken to newcomers in the blockchain area who suggested new business models. And in the end, it was the intention that they said, well, we're going to replace the middleman, but then they wanted to acquire just the same role. And I was challenging them, saying, okay, what's the difference now between a government agency doing what you and now as a small startup want to do? Well, it's not our business model to, I don't know, to be corrupt or to govern the data or whatever. And this in itself I don't find compelling and convincing. So with all the enthusiasm about distributed trust, we still need to be carefully look at whether the middleman is just the evil guy.
Francesca.
I'll get can the blockchain promote socially good behavior?
The other question.
So definitely, I mean, some of the examples were already mentioned. I start from the EU funding, which I think it's interesting. So there is this big call on blockchain for social good. So that's together DigiConnect and Digi Research. And that's obviously trying to incentivize the social impact and sectors where you see beneficial behavior that can be fostered. There is a new project which has 7 million euros, and I think 5 million, it's called ledgers.eu, so it's just been funded. And 5 million is really for civic goods and applications in healthcare and in environment and climate change and other important things. And I think this is a great opportunity. It will be also linked to the Decode project. Actually, we have a booth here, you can check it, where we show technologies that enable, positive and social impact behavior or in the civic space. And then finally, so these are great opportunities, I think. And then I think with the cryptocurrency and crypto economics, I see a lot of potential to incentivize positive behavior. I mean, if it's in the environment, in the healthcare, in education, because definitely you can somehow set the rules and diversify the way, so it's not only financial incentives, but it can be incentives or social positive behavior and collective behavior which have a social impact. So this space I think is very exciting, and definitely from the city angle, we're very looking forward to see those solutions that solve concrete problems, engage citizens, and then can scale across borders, because as you know, cities need to collaborate, and because those technologies are decentralized and open source, is much easier to collaborate if the standardization happens quickly. Okay. So definitely, I think that's good potential there.
Excellent. So, and we had covered already the other two questions. So now, in the 4 minutes that we have, I'm going to ask each of you, and you have very, very little time, to say just, sorry, there were other questions. Well, we have 4 minutes. What do? We go for these questions, or I give you like kind of, maybe you can, we can do both. You are going to have a last word, so just one by one to say a message you want to pass, and you can get inspiration by this. There was also the energy footprint that nobody asked. So go ahead. It's challenging. 3 minutes now. Go.
Okay, so I'll...
Johan.
So the cybercurrency is here, and a blockchain-based economic operating system to run our European economy is coming.
Good, thank you. Catherine?
I would obviously say encourage you to have a look at our convergence thesis, but also a topic we didn't quite touch, but I'm going to leave as a kind of a next question is data monopolies lead to AI monopolies, and I believe the AI race is going to be the next almost arms race and space race. So I think that's a big topic to think about, okay. But I think in terms of incentivizing good behavior, that's a really kind of a next step that we need to think about. Maybe another panel. We could all have a reunion.
Okay, let's do another one.
Following on that, I think we're moving from a digitalization characterized by quasi-monopoly platforms and isolated silos of data to a decentralized digital transformation, which would be centered around the use of blockchain, distributed ledger technologies, distributed machine learning and artificial intelligence, IoT, big data, 3D printing, to have a competitive and more democratic economy in the interests of the citizen.
Thank you, Eva.
Okay, I will say that we have global challenges, and with globalization, especially in the digital world, we don't have barriers, so we need actually to work together for global solutions, but we need to have them decentralized, and specifically in each region or each city, we have to have solutions that are relevant to each society. I think this is the main thing we have to do, and since I'm working now on the AI file, I understand you're very correct. This is the new challenge, automation and deep learning, and how we can have control. So I think we have the technologies to do both. We have to think about managing to do good and profit and balance that, not just profit. So these technologies, they can actually be there to make this world a better place. And I think this is the revolution.
Excellent. And Tony?
I think this is a 20, 30-year project. and it's going to be a mixed outcome project, and so the sooner we get going on things, the better.
Excellent, thank you. Francesca.
So on one side, we have the Silicon Valley leaky monopoly data platforms. On the other side, we have Chinese state-led, a bit more authoritarian model where all the data is just aggregated and used for social scoring. And I hope that Europe will lead a democratic, people rights-based framework which is underpinned by distributed trust and cryptography, and that we will lead the future of the digital society in this way. Great. So an alternative to that.
Great. Ulrike?
So I'm glad to see Europe taking a leading role here, as coming from a company who is based in Germany, although we are international. I would like to make an appeal to the audience. Government is one of the industries that can highly benefit of any blockchain technology, and that is rare. Usually government are later adopters of new technology, and here we have the other way around. So I would really like to see, in addition to all the regulations and funding we have from the EU, to also certain activity and take up in the government and take a leader role there.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for your participation. I really got excited. I hope the audience as well. Thank you very much all for being there. And I hope that now you have a lot of food for thought. Thank you.